Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and welcome to another Indie Game Friday, where each week I take a look at a different independent role-playing game. This week I'm taking a look at an action RPG-lite roguelike called DemonsTier. Developed by Daniel Fernandez Chavez and published by Diabolical Mind, it was released on Steam on February 8th, 2019, but is also available on itch.io. DemonsTier is a 16-bit era-inspired retro action RPG in which one or two players descend into a randomly generated dungeon and fight their way through levels full of monsters, gaining gold to improve their stats, and occasionally uncovering upgrades or allies within. I want to call it an RPG-lite because it doesn't have the standard sorts of experience levels or stats that you'd see in a full-on RPG, but it does have a gold-based character improvement mechanism that is functionally equivalent to an experience system, a number of non-standard stats that directly affect the character's abilities and their playstyle, and a number of unlockable classes to provide different styles of play. So I say, close enough. In terms of plot, 1,000 years in the past, an evil king became so twisted as to become a demon, and unleashed a wave of monsters on the world. He was eventually driven back and sealed, and now, after ages of peace, a mysterious hole has been found in the wake of an earthquake. A hole full of evil, and thus the characters go in to fight and explore. When the game starts, the first player is limited to the knight character, and after fighting through a screen of monsters, comes upon a village. That village has an entrance to the pit, a few shops, although the shops don't open at once, and some random NPCs that you can't really interact with. Going into the pit starts the main sequence of the game. Gameplay within the pit consists of dungeon levels separated into tiers, with each dungeon randomly generated every time you enter. The dungeon may contain winding tunnels and light sources, the occasional bomb that explodes when it hits, various barrels and debris that can be shot to release various coins, chests or safes that contain coins or other devices, lots of enemies, of course, and occasionally a companion in a cage. Each level may also have a sort of mini-boss, basically a tougher-than-normal creature, and a large end chest, which contains either an item or some other manner of upgrade for your character, as well as an exit that leads into the next level. In order to open the door to the next level, you must fulfill the level's mission. Sometimes this is self-evident, defeating all of the monsters on a level, for instance, but may also range into other things, such as opening all of the chests or exploding all of the bombs. Some of these missions are functionally similar, but with additional twists on one particular version, which means that not all of the missions are equal in difficulty. In fact, there is a wide gap between the easiest missions and the hard ones. Add to this the fact that they are randomly selected, and the RNG can impact a level's difficulty before anything else is taken into account. While fighting through a level, a character may collect two types of currency. Gold is used to improve the character's abilities between dungeon levels, while D tokens are used when you successfully return to town to unlock classes or purchase relics and so on. Character improvements during a run go away if you return to town or die, while things purchased with D coins can carry over from game to game regardless of character death, although if you've expended an expendable relic like a potion or a key that you've purchased, it's just gone. If you die, you will lose all currently collected currency, but may be able to recover the D tokens at least if you can fight your way back to the level you died on and destroy your tombstone. As far as gameplay goes, it can be played with either the mouse and keyboard or an Xbox controller. The basic gameplay involves moving the character around while shooting the character's main weapon almost continuously, twin-stick shooter style. Characters can use skills that are based on what class they are, and may pause the game to fire off certain relics, including potions that heal a character up or magic ropes that allow you to return to town. The latter is quite useful indeed, since it's the main way of returning to town with your D tokens intact. During a level, you'll see 5 indicators. 4 of them are your main indicators, showing the total number of non-hidden enemies left, the current dungeon level, how many chests are left, and finally how much gold you have. Some of these are quite useful, either for determining how close you are to achieving a level's mission, or simply to let you know what's worth scouring the level for if you want to go ahead and stick around. The 5th indicator is a timer at the top of the screen. If you run out of time on a level, the Reaper shows up, and then moves towards you, slowly at first, but then he picks up speed. Unkillable, the Reaper will quickly do you in if you come into contact with it. It should be noted that there are cages about some of the levels, and if you have found a silver key or brought one into town, you can unlock it to obtain an NPC that follows you around, shooting at your targets and otherwise just being very helpful. Characters can have a number of basic stats that may be raised during the game. Primary is the character's hit points, which are represented by hearts or a fraction thereof. Defense affects how much damage a character can receive for each hit. Attack distance affects the range of that character's projectiles. Attack power defines the damage each projectile does when it hits. Speed affects the character's movement rate. There's regeneration speed. And finally, improved combo, which affects the amount of D tokens that a character gets when they pick up those particular tokens on the ground. Each of these may be improved by picking up items from boss chests, by buying them up between levels for gold, and presumably by improving gear at the blacksmith when it's open. Although, to be honest, I played this for some hours and didn't actually get to unlock the blacksmith before running out of time for the review this week. But I'll talk about that more later. The level up screen between levels allows you to improve these each in turn, but each upgrade in a particular category costs increasing amounts of gold, thus encouraging one to spread things about a bit at certain points. Each character class has its own initial levels in each of the abilities as well, and between that and the character's secondary skill, it can make each character feel truly different. On certain levels, you will encounter scripted bosses. Some levels always have the same boss, while others may offer a random boss between a certain subset of them. If you're used to action roguelikes, though, you've probably seen this sort of setup before. Graphically, the game nails the 16-bit stylings of the early 90s well, while not looking too crude. Character art has a certain anime style to it, and I may admit that one may get the wrong idea about the game in general if you're just looking at certain of the character art, but if you can handle the lo-fi looks, it's perfectly fine. The music is pretty solid as well, harkening back to a more arcade-style game on an old 16-bit console from the day. That having been said, I do have some issues with the game. The controls take some getting used to. I couldn't get my gamepad to work with the game, so it may be that only Xbox controllers have compatibility, which is a shame because it seems like the game's optimized to use a controller. The keyboard and mouse was serviceable to a point, but I couldn't find a way to assign the use skill key to any keyboard key, meaning that I had to go into the radial menu anytime I wanted to use a character's secondary skill. While you can remap the keys, the process for doing so is very awkward, involving going into the game's main hub town after you've already had a fight and doing it there. It's awkward, and there's a number of other missing options as well. For instance, you can't adjust the volume in-game, you can only switch the volume on or off. Keyboard issues rise again during cutscenes, as the key to skip them doesn't actually seem to have an equivalent keyboard key. So if you're playing keyboard and mouse, get used to sitting through all the cutscenes without skipping. The writing is theoretically translated into a few different languages, but I can say that the English translation isn't great. Fortunately, the storyline, while interesting, isn't that critical to the overall play, but be prepared for some head-scratchers in terms of phrasing and terms if you're following it. Finally, the pace of the game can be a bit tedious. I had to eventually give up on unlocking the blacksmith simply because every time I died and came back to town, I had to start again from the very beginning of the first level. Yes, if you recall via the magic rope, you can spend money on potions and such, but doing so also resets your advancement and makes you start from the very first level. Am I complaining about restarting from scratch in a roguelike? Okay, yeah, maybe I am. Usually I don't mind that sort of thing, but getting gear upgrades and plans and such that you need to use at the blacksmith, but being unable to even address them because I simply have to get through not one, but two major bosses? At least I'm assuming that you get through two major bosses and unlock the blacksmith, because I never actually got past the second boss. I tried it a couple times, but it took me a long time to even get each try in. Which brings me to my final complaint of the game, and really one of the main reasons that the pacing is so awkward. Certain aspects of the difficulty derive purely from the RNG impacting not the gear, but the level completion missions and the level design itself. While being at the mercy of the RNG is standard for a roguelike, I know, I accept that, and I am actually pleased when I see that in a roguelike. There are certain level completion missions in this game that, combined with the time limit involved, can be incredibly frustrating. These missions require you, for instance, to kill all enemies, in certain instances, but there's a mission that actually requires you to kill a hidden enemy, which only appears after you killed all the prior enemies. So it's like kill all enemies plus. And while that usually appears in proximity of the final enemy that you kill, that's not always the case. So in a couple instances, I got a long, winding level that I could barely clear in the time limit, only to find myself having to double back all the way through the level in order to finish the mission. And by then, I'm being chased by the Reaper. And one of the missions itself requires you to hit the Reaper and then escape through the outdoor, which means that you may end up clearing the level very swiftly and then having to wait around doing basically nothing for minutes on end waiting for the time to expire, and then hoping that when you encounter the Reaper, you do it in such a place that you can tag it with a shot and then quickly duck back out of the level before it catches up. But due to the RNG maps, you're probably going to get tagged in return, most likely, which is either going to kill you outright or take the vast majority of your health. Yes, I suppose certain missions are going to be harder than others, just as a matter of course, but a lot of my playtime while reviewing this was just simply doing several levels to get fairly far in, and then having the RNG basically screw me on a mission. And that almost ruined the game for me, and I can see where that would ruin the game for some people. I think DemonsTier is good. Don't get me wrong, the graphics and music are charming, the gameplay itself is quite fun. I do recommend it, but only if you can get it on sale. It's a good design and a good idea overall that's hampered mostly by pure implementation of the controls, which can hopefully be fixed, and a mission system that can be brutally arbitrary, and this is coming from someone that likes things that are normally brutally arbitrary. Even I was beginning to get a little bit aggravated, if you can't tell. But you know what? I'm going to leave it at that. This has been the RPG Crawler with Indie Game Friday DemonsTier. As always, I'm going to put a link to the Steam page in the description below. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, comment if you've got any feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content, both tabletop and computer. Until next time, take care and goodbye. And if you're still watching this far, I'd like to take a moment to thank those who have supported this channel via Patreon or direct donations throughout the years, without which this channel could not have lasted as long as it has. For those who are feeling particularly generous, you can still support my work through Patreon and now through Subscribestar as well, through the links in the description below.